great. Twitch's dashboard doesn't properly rewind. That's interesting. It's not compatible with the back button in the browser. That's fine. That's fine. Alright, now I can see what's going on. So I'll go ahead and tell the world that I'm streaming, because everybody wants to know. Streaming, game dev, gonna build spaceship stuff. And we'll repeat the process over here. I didn't sleep so well last night, but I should be able to do something. And, you know, it's been a week because I actually had something to do on Sunday and I couldn't come by. So, in that week, nothing happened to this project. I don't really work on it much when I'm not actively streaming. But there is a new version out. If you didn't see that last week, you can go and play the new version if you like. And that makes it a little bit easier to see the progress that we've made, or that I've made. So let's go ahead and take a look at what else we would like to do to make this game more fun and playable. So I think that we probably still need to fix the driving a little bit, but I don't have strong opinions on it exactly at the moment. What I'm considering is just creating some more elements and giving a couple of different difficulty levels and having different kinds of science and different kinds of areas, so that when you choose to go to a place, you know how difficult it's going to be once you get there. But since, of course, this game doesn't actually have any players or game-like elements, it currently is a pretty basic setup. What I might want to do right now is to allow for saving and loading the game. I'm thinking that it's going to be a very open game. It's not going to have a whole bunch of different save slots because there's not really any need. The progress is pretty linear. But what I'll do is every time you go back to the bay, I will save your progress. Another thing I could really stand to do is fix up the collisions here and this sparkling overlay, which is, I don't know how to fix that. I actually don't know how to fix either of those things, but we can give it a shot. These boxes, is it their center? Because if it's their center, that's actually not too hard. Yeah, so these boxes, as you can see, you can hit them, but their collision is so small, you know? So what we're going to want to do is change how the colliders actually detect each other. So to do that, we'll want to open up the thing which actually handles the collisions. Which I believe is this. So here we can see that it's getting called, but I'm actually not sure if it's being detected here. No, I think we've got to go over to the pusher. So let's go ahead and find references to this. And we should see exactly who is talking to us. Here we are. So this is in the cheap collider pusher. And here we just say push this. Okay. So I guess it is there. And then what we do in here is with this pusher pushes all of our things, and what we do here is we test and see whether or not it's within a certain bound. So for each mesh set within the mesh sets, we're going to want to find whether or not we are within the bounds of that mesh set. If we are within the bounds of that mesh set, then we're going to want to call that mesh set specifically. So this is the global, the static value. It goes through all of the potential things we could collide with. And this is when we've determined that there is a field that we can collide with. This is what we call within that field. So here we can see that the float range is the pusher.scale. And I think that the issue with that is that it also needs to factor in the size of the target. And that's a little bit difficult. So if we take a look down here, we literally just test and see whether or not max range, whether or not we're within max range. I think what we can do is we can just add the scale to max range. I think that might be fine. The problem is that this thing is not an object which has a concept of the size of the individual things, but it does have this vector 3 scale. So what we can do is we can use that vector 3 scale. We could average it all, or we could just take the first one. I think that taking the first one is probably close enough. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So here, we're just going to go ahead and add in the scale of our scale. There we are. Oh, this is wrong. This is correct. There we are. So that will allow us to add in our size as well, so large things bounce easier. Let's go ahead and try it out. To Infinity and Beyond says hi. I looked away for a little while, so I'm not sure when he came in, but welcome. So these are large panels, but these aren't, I don't know if these are pushers. Oh wow, they really get pushed. So there's obviously some physics that is not using the number correctly. That's print. Let's see here. Stop. Somehow it had Twitch highlighted while I was over here playing the game, and I was like, stop, and it was like, oh, you want to print something? Yeah, I love printing things. All right, so the range here is going to be determined by our max range. Range times equal pusher dot velocity magnitude. So for some reason, this is getting clamped unusually. It's not properly getting clamped. Now we're further from the center when we collide these days, but I'm not sure why that's causing us issue. Range equals the normalized value of the range times the max range divided by 4 plus the pusher velocity divided by 2. So in short, what we're doing is we're taking the normal from the center of our collider to whatever we've collided with, and we're multiplying that by the max range divided by 4. Since we've increased the max range, that's increased the pusher volume here. And so what we've got to do is we've just got to change the pusher's volume so that it is more reasonable to the size. It's just a balancing act. You increase one number and decrease the other, right? So to do that, we'll just need to grab the pusher, which should just be named pusher. Here it is. And go down into our pusher script here. Here's the velocity magnitude. We're going to bring that down to 0.6. And that should allow it to have a lower threshold. It should fire things off more slowly when we bounce into them, because we don't want them to fly away from us faster than we're going. That feels very unrealistic. To Infinity and Beyond says, is this the same spaceship management sim type game? That requires several sets of assets to do. I need both people and spaceships. So what I'm doing right now is I'm building a spaceship thing, and then I can reuse the spaceship parts. And I'm going to build a person's thing after that so that I can do all of the people stuff. And then when I have both of those assets combined, I'll be able to build that project pretty easily. So this game isn't too far away from being ready to rumble, but it isn't a sim game. It's a pilot around and grab stuff game. And it might, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but it's going to be playable, and that's the important part. Tezrim says, boom shakalak. I'm not sure what that means. And you can see that this is still bouncing away a little bit too fast. Alright, so let's go ahead and take the velocity magnitude down to 0.3. It may be that I misread what the velocity magnitude is, and I am now doing silly things, so that's fine. Is it just that the large things don't work right? Let's find out. A little bit of bad luck with this level layout for testing purposes because we got this long span here we have to cross, but we'll get somewhere soon enough. Those long spans make a lot more sense when you realize that the zapper is going to zap you. So that's the whole point of those. It's going to be a little bit of a rush to try and get across before the scanner scans you. We didn't get anything with large pieces. All we got are these small pieces. And they seem to be not too bad. I might have to shrink the collider a little bit now that I've adjusted it to include the size of the things I'm colliding with. But that's nothing too terrible. To Infinity wants to know if I've tried the new ECS stuff from Unity. No, I haven't tried any of the new stuff from Unity because they discontinued the monodevelop. So if I were to try any of the new stuff from Unity, I would need to install a new IDE. So it's going to be a while before I bother getting around to that. What I do want to do is test whether or not this stuff works better with the asynchronous scene loading instead of the way I'm doing it right now. I think that's a test I'm going to do in just a second here, as soon as I finish bouncing off some stuff. Here's a bunch of engines, right? There's some cargo bay. Let's see if any of these... Oh, that's not cargo bays. Well, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's fine. We're going to go ahead and test some nonsense out with asynchronous scene loading. Because right now we've got this issue where every time we load in an object, there is a delay. And as far as I know, there's no asynchronous... Let me go ahead and test that. Unity asynchronous instantiation. Nope. Doesn't seem to be any way to do it other than doing in the asynchronous level load. So let's go ahead and make an asynchronous level test. Create a scene. Async level test 1. We'll go on over into that scene and we'll drop a level chunk into the scene. We do not need any of this stuff. And here in our level testing, there it is, we'll just go ahead and drop in this thing. You see that long pause? That's what's happening, except for it's happening during play, which is obviously not great. So this is the new ship damager object that gets put into the game, the new level module. What we'd like to do is asynchronous load this object in and then do something with it. So we're going to go ahead and test that. I'll just save this scene, and then we'll go back into our normal scene, which is here. And we're going to want to have this set up the level in a slightly different way than usual. So to do that, we're just going to hotwire it. We're not going to... well, you know what? I should probably just make something that... I should probably just make another one here. We'll call this one a scene builder. And I'll probably merge them together or delete one or the other. But for now, all we need to do is have something which tests this out fairly easily. Come on. There we are. We'll open this up. And what we're going to need for the scene builder is a set of strings like this. Scene options. And then what we're going to want to do is have a method for it to spawn in a new object. So public void spawn. And then what we're going to want to have here is a menu call so that we can do it live. That's not how that works. That's how it works. We'll just grab a scene from the list. And then we're going to do a scene.asynchronous load. Is that how it works? Scene. Scene loader is probably just something I also created. Yeah, so there's something. Is it scene manager? Let's see. There's got to be a namespace for this shit, right? Yeah, there it is. So inside of that, we're going to have a scene stuff. So here's scene in general. Here's load scene mode, scene builder, scene loader, scene manager, dot active scene create scene, get active scene at, load scene async. And we'll just give it the name of the scene. Yeah, like this. And that's going to be our scene. And then we're going to want to load it additively. There we go. And we're going to see whether or not we can prevent getting that nasty hiccup whenever we do this, because that's something bad. We don't like nasty hiccups, right? Nobody likes nasty hiccups. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and display the frame rate here. And I'm going to actually override this one more time. Public void update. I'm just going to make it so that when we hit space, that happens automatically, so I don't have to go over and interrupt the view here. If input.get mouse button down 0 spawn. There we are. So now whenever I click, we'll spawn something in, and that's a little bit faster than having to pause the game and right-click on the menu items and that garbage. So over there in the corner, you can see that we have a 70 FPS, which is fine. And when I click, it gives us an array exception because I forgot to actually put the name of the scene in here. So we'll try that one more time here. The only problem here is I'm not actually sure whether or not I need to add this to the project before I can do it in edit mode, or whether or not it works fine in edit mode. Yeah. So we'll need to actually go in here and add that to the scene list, which I believe is in the build menu. There it is. So we'll just go ahead and drop in a new scene. Doop. So we're at 70, and when I click, it drops down to 20. But that hiccup is a lot less severe than the one I had before, which was dropping down to 3. So what happens there is we're still losing some frames there. It's still not loading in very smoothly, but it is substantially smoother than the way it was loading. I wonder what's causing all this slowdown. Can I load in, I'm trying to figure out ways to load in the scene that would be a little bit less break-y. So what we could do is I could turn off all these modules, but the problem is that they still take up a full load when they come into the scene, even if they're turned off, which is kind of bullshit, but I can't do anything about it as far as I know. This load delayer will actually automatically turn them on, so what we're going to do is just do that. We'll mute all of these things, and we'll save this as an empty scene. just lots of disabled stuff. And we'll see whether or not that loads any faster. Because the only other option is to have placeholders, and that's kind of obnoxious. So click. Okay, so that loads in nice and fast. So I guess that'll work great, since that appears to be perfect. I didn't see any slowdown at all. So apparently when it's disabled and you're doing asynchronous loading, it runs much better than when it's disabled and you're doing synchronous, and you're loading it as a game object. There's clearly a difference between how these things are treated. So we're still getting a drop, but it's only down to 50, and only when we're in the middle of this mess and it's all getting instantiated. So I believe that that is a substantial improvement, and it's worth doing. So that's something that we'll probably go ahead and do now. Because the other option is to replace all of these objects here with placeholders that point to prefabs. And that's technically possible. That's what I did with my other game, because I was doing much more complicated things with it. But I don't think that's what we want to do here. The slowdown is not bad enough to require us to do more effort. So we're going to want to just go ahead and do whatever's easiest in this case. Okay. So this is the broken ship cargo rail, but it is now a scene rather than an object. And now the thing about this is that when this happens, it's loading in an object asynchronously, whereas the level builder here is presuming that you're going to get this level module up and running instantly. However, I programmed with this in mind, so what we can do is easily fix up this situation. The only issue here is that we have to make sure the level builder connects with the individual object, regardless of when it finishes loading in, and that will allow it to align it properly, because otherwise it's just going to float randomly in space. So what we're going to need to do for that is just change a little bit about this. So here's where we create the level module, and then we do this lock command, and then we do this active modules.add. So what we're going to want to do here is have this change a little bit. Notice that we changed current.change to true already up here. We're going to go ahead and do that with this level size as well. That's so that we won't spawn in an infinite number of things, even if it takes 10 minutes for this to come in. But what we do need to do is change out this instantiation for a scene. And that means that we're going to want to hide this in another way. So public list string, it's not even a list, it's just an array of strings. String array module scenes. There we go. And that will allow us to grab random module scenes. But the problem is that our level module setup here is a little bit awkward. So we're going to have to write something to instantiate these levels. And let's go ahead and do that down here. Public void instantiate string, or instantiate chunk string scene name. And then what we'll do is we will grab that and just do the same scene management that we already did. Like so. But we have to keep track of where we're going and what we're doing. So to do that, what we're going to have to do is save which module was attached to this particular next incoming object. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll temporarily turn off our level builder while we're waiting for it to call home. So for that, we're just going to have a public level module loading equals null. And we will have this be loading connection for. And we're going to have that be the currently existing module. And if we have a currently existing module, we'll just break. So if loading connection 4, then return. And then down here, what we'll say is we'll say loading connection 4 equals, and then the current module. Yeah, in fact, we probably don't even need to have this level module current, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. And then what we'll do... Oh, okay. This is not great. Shit. There's actually a lot of metadata within the level module. Can I access a scene and grab a module within it? Scene S equals scene manager dot get scene by name. Scene. We'll go ahead and just assume that there's going to be a variable. Let's go ahead and put it in here for now. S dot get root game objects. Yeah. So public level chunk or level module, module in scene, string scene name. The only other option for this is to make it part of the scene spec, which would be annoying, so we're not going to. So what we're going to do is get all those game object equals there we are. Scene equals S to get room game object, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's fine. And then we'll just take the very first one, for each it. So for each game object ob in obs if, and then we'll say level module lm equals ob.get component level module. If lm, return lm, return null. So up here, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab these. These are obviously going to be strings. So string next equals module scenes dot length. And then what we're going to want to do is have our setup here as a level module next module equals module in scene next. And so down here we'll say next module, and we'll say this here. I know that everybody likes watching me code. I can tell because nobody shows up when I code. That's fine. I should zoom in so people can see it if they do show up. So that will allow us to do the things, but we're also going to need to replicate both of these down here. Just this one, I guess. There we are. That'll allow us to keep that up there. And then we say if it is in fact the same module that we already instantiated, then we don't need it. So next module equals that, and module scenes dot count is greater than 1. Then we're going to just pick a new module because, you know, whatever, right? So as a last resort, if it turns out that our scene happens to be the same one that we implemented last time, we'll just grab a random scene that's not, that might still be the same one. No, wait, because this is a while. So we'll just keep trying until we find one that's not the same. And it doesn't matter whether it properly connects or anything. We just don't want the same thing twice. Down here, we're going to go ahead and have a next module. There we are. That should all work. Except that this not spin is not going to be of any use to us. Because it is not part of the level module sync up. So for this to work, we're going to need to have a public void align async level module. level module next. There we are. So what this will do is it will allow us to take our loading connection for this setup here and actually set it up properly. We don't need to have any of this here. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. But what we do want to do is lock the module to the one we're loading the connection for. So this will just align it properly. And then we'll add it to our list. And then we're going to go ahead and break that. Now we have to check and make sure that it's not already broken, just for the safety's sake. If loading connection 4 equals null, then there's something wrong. Debug.log. That's not actually necessarily wrong, so that's fine. This is just going to be the first one. First level node loaded. Return. Perfect. So with this all set up, basically what happens is we have to, at the very end of all of this nonsense, actually load up the module. And for that, we're just going to go ahead and call instantiate chunk. Next. Asynchronously load the next level chunk. Perfect. And so then what happens is over here in the level module, we're going to want to have this, when it first gets created, or call home. So for that, we're going to go ahead and say public void start. We could do it in awake. Awake is probably better. We're going to go out to the level builder. There is no active for the level builder, which is kind of odd, so we'll go ahead and make one. Public static level builder active, because there's only ever going to be one. And here in awake, void awake active equals this. There. And then over here in the level module, we can just grab that level builder.active align async level module. Why does that have an underscore in front of it? I don't think it needs an underscore. Let's take the underscore out. Oh, it has an underscore because I was planning on putting in a reference as a static. So public static void align, there we are. And then what that'll do is it'll just be active.align async level modules next. There we are. And here in level modules, we don't need this part. We can just do this. Tell the level manager that we loaded. Now my only concern is that the asynchronous level loading might call this before the outlets actually get instantiated. We'll find out. If that's the case, I'll have to be a little bit more careful, put it in start rather than awake, but we'll find out. So that will probably work, but I'm kind of just programming straight up with no tests. I do know that we have some leftover garbage here. So in start, we've got an issue where it's not working. And what we're going to want to do is just go ahead and instantiate one at random here. So instantiate chunk, module scenes, random.range 0, module scenes dot length. And then what we'll do is this part we'll put down into our sign in here. Here we are. Boom. So next.lock, active modules.add, next. Perfect. That way it'll work fine all the time, at least in theory. There we are. So now that we have that all set up, what are we going to do to test it? Well, we're just going to go ahead and make that the only option. This one level here is going to be the only option, right? No, I'm going to go ahead and fix it up so there are a couple of different options. Having only one option would be pretty disappointing. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate this level, go into the duplicate, delete the broken ship cargo rail, and put in a different one, like Broken ship resident rail. We'll just have the two rails set up, right? There we are. And as before, we're going to want to have this all hidden so that it doesn't slow us down too much. And we'll just save that, and we'll add that to our list of buildables. And then we'll go over into our main scene and set that up. So this level builder isn't necessary. We'll delete this. The scene builder can go away as a script. We don't need it. It will just get in our way. So with that in mind, we'll turn the level builder back on and we'll drop in the two module scenes that we want. Come on. Come on. There we are. One of which will be the async level test. I put an H in because I wasn't really bothering, and now it's starting to bother me. Well, whatever. It's not going to stay those names for long. We're just going to do this for testing purposes, and once we find out if it works, we'll turn them into a proper name setup. Erdway says, hello, hello. We are trying to optimize today. So how well did we optimize? Well, not great, as you can see. But we got a scene as invalid error, which isn't what I expected. If s equals null, then debug.log error. You spelled the scene name wrong on the level builder. There we go. Let's go ahead and give that another shot. I'm not sure what I spelled wrong, but I'm sure it'll tell me. I can also drop scenes in there. What the heck am I doing? Hold on. There's no reason for these to be strings. They can just be scenes. And that's a lot easier. Erdroy says chunked setup. Well, basically, the only way to asynchronously load game objects into Unity is to use the asynchronous scene loader. So that's what I'm doing. I'm converting our chunks into scenes because it loads up much more smoothly, in theory. But what we're going to want to do here is have these be scenes instead of strings. And then down here in this is going to be a scene. And then this is going to be a scene. Can I pass this a scene? Just straight up scene? I cannot pass it a scene. Really? That's interesting. Well, that's kind of dumb. I guess I'll pass it the build index. There we are. Erdroy says to definitely just take the object, seen as editor only, he thinks. You think so? Let's do a test of that, because I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and tell the scene universe that we're doing that as well, just because that way we'll know when we do it in a debug mode. Scenes were invalidated. How annoying. Fatal error. Oh, okay, well, if it's never going to be a null, that's interesting. You can't have a null. Is a scene a struct? So I cannot get a reference with this. So basically you're telling me that this is the worst possible approach I could try and take. And you're right. Okay. So after all of that, I do in fact need to undo all of that nonsense. God damn it. Back to using strings. But this will still always be null, if it always be false, because apparently scene manager will return an actual scene regardless. That seems pretty silly. So as you can see, it says that it's never going to be null, which is a little bit odd. The variable s is never, yeah, that's fine. We don't need it. Just delete it. So I guess we'll go ahead and say if s.name does not equal scene name. But I don't know what happens when it tries to return a scene that doesn't exist. That seems odd. Either way, I've got to re-enter the scenes again. So let's do that. It appears that scenes are a little bit annoying. I've never really had to do this before, but you can see how slow this is. That's really slow, and the problem is that it's barfing here. You spelled the scene async level test 1 wrong. But the problem is, I think what's going on here is I'm trying to load the same scene twice. And it is... it is barfing because I'm trying to asynchronously add the same scene twice. Let's look at Unity, add scene twice. No, it says it should work. Well, let's set the level size to 0, so it only loads one thing, and see what happens. Alright, so that loaded fine with async level test 1. So we're definitely loading in async level test 1. But for some reason, we're getting an error when we try to load it in twice. See? Async level test 1. There's no possible way that I spell it right and then spell it wrong. I can only assume that something is getting in the way of loading the scene again. I'm not really up on how scenes work. Oh, I forgot to actually... I forgot to tell YouTube that I was streaming, so I posted a video saying that I was streaming and then left it as private, because that's definitely the most effective way to tell people that we're streaming. Alboechi came in. Maybe he knows about scenes. Is he a scene specialist? I don't know. You spelled async level test 1 wrong. I didn't, because it exists in the game already as async level test 1. Okay, so async level test 2 is the only scene that came in as an additional test there. This is really strange. Because async level test 1 is definitely in the build. El Boechi says he can't help. Garcio. So it is loading in async level test 2. I think I know what the issue is. I think that the problem is that we're not allowed to asynchronously load 2 things at once. This takes a scene as an argument. How does that work? Oh, scene loaded is an event. Okay. I can do this. And then what we'll do is up here in Awake, scene manager dot scene loaded dot add listener. Wait, I can only invoke, I can't listen? What good is an event if I can't sign up for it? There must be some way to sign up for this that I'm not aware of. Yeah, it's plus equals. I think you're right. So active scene change plus equals. And then we're going to want to have some scene args here. We're going to just go ahead and create some. Just arbitrarily. I don't really... we'll make it an actual event here. Void level scene loaded. Paused for scene load equals false. And up here, we'll go ahead and just go ahead and add that. But it has the wrong number of arguments. I think I have to actually... I have to take the scene here. Just to like that. That should be fine. I'm so used to Unity events. It's so strange to see them using something besides Unity events, but I guess that's just because it's in the setup, right? All right. So that didn't work. Did I forget to say that we're paused for scene loading when we did the instantiation? There it is, pause for scene load. So what I think is happening here is that we are unpausing when the initial scene loads. Let's see what happens here. Loaded scene versus garden 2. See how that says that there's it's not the scene we're looking for? So what we're going to want to do is basically if the scene 1 name is nothing, we'll just ignore it. We can also have a waiting for, and then if the scene name matches that, will be properly set up. So we'll go ahead and have this be a string. Can you make a string a null? I can't remember. If s2.name equals paused for scene load, then paused for scene load equals null. And then down here, we'll do that same setup. If loading connection 4 equals null, or paused for scene load does not equal null. There we are. And then down here, we'll say paused for scene load equals scene name. Erdroy is coming through with all of the scene knowledge. I've never really worried about scenes because I usually just do everything with building a game object. But it's clear that scenes have their own peculiar setup. That was a really long delay. Why did it pause for that long? Well, let's go ahead and see what's up. We're at a queued scene loader. Use the list or queue and then load first. Wait till it's load next. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad, but I don't think it's necessary. What I have a problem with is that I don't seem to be able to get this thing to trigger the next scene. And I think that's because it signs up for everything before the outputs have been configured, with the result being that it doesn't have any outputs. The asynchronous scene loading is kind of a pain. Yeah, that should have hit it and it didn't. So, the question is the level builder skipping? Or... I bet the level builder's skipping. Hold on. No, that's fine. That should work. Let's go ahead and get it telling us what the heck's going on. Waiting on added scene element. Debug.log, waiting on loading scene. Instead of trying scene loaded, try active scene changed. Yeah, okay. Except for active scene changed is what I'm viewing. Oh, try scene loaded. Yeah. Yeah, that was the event I was originally trying. What sort of arguments does that have? Holy shit, that's got a crap ton of arguments. Why does it have so many arguments? Do you think it'll complain if I don't have all of those arguments? I bet it will. I bet it will barf and insist that I put every single goddamn argument in. Great. So I'm not going to do it. That's a pain in the ass. Active scene works fine. It's just that I have a bug in some other part of my code. That is a long-ass delay. That's not acceptable. But here you can see how it says waiting on loading scene. So I guess that actually didn't get called. It might be that the scene is not actually correct here, so else debug.log scene loaded was not target. It's and then s2.name. Garden 2, that's correct. Did Garden 2 take longer to load than the initial scene? Is that the issue? Well, here, why don't we go ahead and have it like this? If paused for scene load does not equal null and S2 equals paused for scene load, and that's else, we're going to go ahead and start. But this isn't any faster than what I had before. It's the exact same fastness. Today's experiment looks like it's probably a failure. Because this is not any faster than the way I was doing it. It's really strange. During testing it worked fine, but now that I've actually implemented it, it's just as slow as it ever was. It might be a physics thing, like it's trying to associate with the physics of the ship or something. For some reason, though, we don't appear to actually be waiting on loading scene. Great. So there's something stupid happening here. Well, the thing is, Erdroy, that those delays happened before, even in the middle of play. It would just delay whenever I loaded a chunk in. So it's not really a scene start thing, although if there is a scene start problem, you know, that's a different issue, so you're right there. I've got to get it to actually work first, I suppose. So what we're going to do is we're going to forcibly... We're going to just stop with these events. They're obviously not working. They're just being a pain in the ass. And then what we'll do is we will turn off the waiting for scene loading when the module calls home. And then we can actually just check that one. We don't need to check both. Because it's only one operation. God damn it! This is too much trouble to worry about. Let's go ahead and undo everything we did. Yeah! Hoo-ah! Woo! Shoosh! Zoop, whoosh, zoom, and now we are done. Hooray. That was a pain. Go over here into the level module, same thing. All right. Same as it ever was. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just lock. Drop modules back in. Don't need these tests anymore. They're useless. Just drop these guys in. Why can't I drop these in? No, I just was reloading or something. All right, so let's go ahead and contrast and compare. The level setup that we had there, you see how fast that was? The asynchronous loading was really slow in comparison. Isn't that really annoying? But the problem is that when we are moving forward, there, see that hiccup? That's what I'm trying to get rid of. The problem is that that hiccup happens regardless of whether or not the ship has the pieces inside of it turned on or off. So to show that, what we can do is just go in and turn off all of these interior objects like so. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Unlock, thank you. Turning off these interior objects has no effect on it because there is a slow loader on every single one of these, because I kind of knew about this. And so the point here is that the slow loader will turn these objects on per frame depending on whether or not your frame rate is high enough. I don't believe that the routing modules need it, so we're not going to worry about them. There. So you can see how that really does spread out the load. I guess maybe that's good enough. Imperial 2014 says, hello, how are you? I presume that 2014 is when he joined Twitch and not when he was born. Otherwise, you're doing fantastic at this whole learning language thing. Bonk. Go away, or I shall bonk you a second time. Yeah, so this is feasible, I guess. There's still some hiccups, but the slow loader does seem to be doing its job. I could probably make it even slower if I wanted to, but it's already just one object per frame, I think. Let's take a look. Oh, just once per frame. So here, it actually turns all of the objects on immediately. Why don't we go ahead and... Oh, no, it's just one. There it is. Yeah, that's fine. So that's just one per frame. That's not going to get any slower. Genuine Cried says, first time I catch the stream live. Well, welcome. You are here on a day where you came in at just the right moment. If you'd come here when I started the stream, you would now be seething with anger, like I'm sure that Elboetchi and Erdroy are, because I literally just Control-Z'd every single thing I did in the past hour. Brilliant, brilliant, I know. So the other thing that I was going to do today is I think that it's time for us to lock the assets and the purchases into our player profile and allow you to continue games from where you left off, which shouldn't be very hard. Alboetchi liked watching me Control-Z an hour of code. Well, in this case, Genuine Cried, the Control-Z was because apparently scenes do not do what I thought they did. I've very rarely had to use them in any kind of detail, and they are weird and creepy. They don't work right, but, you know, it's just me. I don't know why I've got a tree here. I think that we can probably delete the tree. All right, so we're going to go over into the home base. Here is the home base, and this is where all of our assets get collected and all the stuff that gets turned on. So we're going to want to have one of these placeholder buttons be to let us turn off or reset the progress of any given, of our playthrough. And that's just going to be a button that calls a specific function. That said, I don't know, we don't seem to have do we have a resource manager? We should have one, right? There is a universe. That's not quite what I want, though. There it is, the carrier. This is going to have responsibility for saving and loading all of your assets. See, Gitz has it going too easy. If I can't just hold Control-Z for long enough, I won't feel the idiocy of my wasted hour. But I was only changing one file, and I could I actually do have a version control on this, so I could have rolled it back, but it was much more fun to control Z it. So here we've got a couple of situations where we are trying to load in a change. So when the player returns here, then what happens is the player gets all of his stuff loaded in. So when here in start, we say, if there's any scrap metal in the cargo, load it in. But what we're also going to want to have happen is the universe has a whole bunch of settings on it, and we're going to want to have the universe save those. And load those. So the scrap metal in cargo is the one thing we don't care about. But if it has scrap metal in cargo, we know that it doesn't need to be loaded. Otherwise, we will go ahead and load it. Return doesn't need to have, or we'll say save state. Return load state. Except for it might be a save state. Sorry, I'm trying to think this through. The problem is that we don't know whether or not this is the first time that we've come into our carrier. It may very well be that this is a return trip, and therefore we don't want to load, we just want to save. However, we can manage that using a static variable. So let's go ahead and do that. Public static bool first time equals true. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to say if first time, then first time equals false, load stats. Else, and we don't even need an else, we'll just put a save stat at the end of it, save state. So public void load state, public void save state. So there are a couple of things that we need to be aware of, and those are harvestable objects, research, and scrap metal. Those are stored as dictionaries, and dictionaries are really terrible. You can't, they're really terrible in Unity. Unity does not really understand how to save them or load them. So when we do that, we're going to have to do it a little bit differently, a little bit manually. And that's not going to be too bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the player prefs, and we're going to save and load everything in player prefs like this. So we should be able to get all of the keys, right? Is there not a get all keys ability? Oh my god. There is no get list of keys in player prefs. This is bad design. Alright, well, since there's no way to get keys from player prefs, we're going to have to keep a list of all the keys. Now it's starting to get annoying. This shouldn't be necessary. Wow, this is dumb. I guess the best option is for us to keep a list of all of the keys that we were using. And it's not ideal, but it is, you know, at least vaguely useful. Jason says, Erdroy says, use JSON. Yeah, that's what I did before, and I kind of just assumed that this was internally being saved as JSON. But for some reason, they're missing some basic JSON functionality, like getting a list of everything. So it's going to be a little bit tough for me to deal with that. But I will go ahead and just do it via a manual list of shit. That'll work fine. if player prefs dot key exists. Wait, was there like a player prefs adjunct there? Oh, an exception. That's no good. So if it has the key, we'll load it up. So when we do that, we're going to go ahead and say science target dot research dot add, and then we'll add in the key res and the value, which is player prefs dot get. I guess I could make it an int or a float, but I think it's always going to be an int, so we'll get an int. Res. There we are. And then we'll just do the same thing for our grabbables. What are they called? Harvest? Yeah, harvest types. Except for, obviously, it's not the science target dot research, it is the harvestable object dot collected. There we go. Now the only question is whether or not add will add a second value if you already have one in the stack. Erdway says, isn't JSON better? Yeah, it's better. He probably said that quite a while ago. If you're adding in player prefs, it is just one key, right? It's not going to let you add multiple identical keys. If it does, that's also very stupid. If player prefs dot has key metal, then we'll make that our universe. Universe dot scrap metal equals player prefs dot get int metal. Right, very, very basic setup, and we're just gonna do the same thing down here in safe state. So player prefs dot set key metal, comma player dot scrap metal universe dot scrap metal. For each these. Player prefs dot set int, and then we'll want to say res, and then the key value pair key, and then the key value pair dot value. We're actually using a float there, so I guess these should be floats. I'm not sure that both of them, no, one of them's float, one of them's in. Okay, so that's fine. I might have had a reason for that, in which case, whatever, right? I'll just do it the way that it's listed. There we are. And then this one will be player prefs dot set key, set int, har plus kvp dot key, comma, kvp dot value. There we are. And then debug dot log, saved player prefs. And then up here we'll say loaded player prefs. Perfect. So with that in mind, it should work fine. The first time you boot it up, it will load the state, and then after that, it will only save the state. And that should allow us to just continually build up more and more cargo, right? I'm a little bit worried about this just because I'm not 100% sure when that static variable resets. If I make some money here, and you know it counts as being loaded or whatever, do I have to worry about whether or not let's just launch for now. So I'm worried that maybe it's not going to work as well as I thought, just because it's going to have an issue where it is going to assume something stupid happens. Okay, so I do not have a welder, or is it just that these boxes can't be welded? It might be that the boxes can't be welded. They do seem to be moving towards me, which is usually a sign that you can weld them. There might be a bug, because I just changed how the collider works. They might be getting pushed away before... is just boxes that aren't very nice. All right. So with that in mind, we'll return to the carrier. We got 13 metal slag. We're going to stop. We're going to hit play. If we look down here, it should say that it is saved player prefs. So now when we hit play, will it say 13? It'll say 13. There we are. So the only other thing we need to worry about is the build menu, because the build menu has this giant set of content that can be bought. And we're going to want to make it so that once you've bought something, you keep it. So for that, what we're going to want to do is these things where we set up the, here it is, set the construction button .click, and the construction button up here has this Elwin scanner. These construction button elements just set up a list of live elements here. What we're going to need to do is have that static list get loaded from player prefs and written to player prefs. So to do that, we're going to want to just tell our carrier that it needs to save every single time. Now that said, the carrier doesn't have a, we don't need this to be public, it can be protected or private. It doesn't have a live, so we're going to go ahead and make it have a live. There we are. And that way we can tell it to save whenever we need it to. So down here we're going to go ahead and say, we really shouldn't be calling this carrier, I don't really care at this point, that's fine. So it's going to be something where when we click like this, we're going to want to have this all save our setup. So carrier.live.save to player pref. There we are. That should do. And what we're going to want to do is here in the carrier, we're going to want to just add in this this set of elements. Where is it being added to? Constructible.constructed. So here it is. This is what we need to be. These constructeds need to be saved and loaded. So that's what we'll work on right now. For each string value in constructible.constructeds. Oh, that's not the right place. This is the right place. Except for that's not even the right place. This is the right place. Oh no, how are we going to load them? That's not great. I guess we'll just check and see whether or not player prefs has them. So, wow, this is kind of obnoxious. Here we are. So this is if is constructed. We're going to go ahead and say if constructed.contains key, return true. Otherwise, we're going to check player prefs. If player prefs.contains key. An alternative is we could save it as an array of strings in JSON format, but I think that's fine. All right, so that'll work, and then we can save it with our carrier, but we won't be able to load it. Can't reasonably load constructibles here. Do it at point of use. Done. So down here we'll save it. Player prefs dot set bool dot set. There is no bool, so set int. And then it's just going to be the value and then 1, but it's going to have that con prefix. And up here we're going to want to say player prefs has the key and it equals 1 because it might equal 0, right? No, it'll never equal 0. We'll just go ahead and say that if it exists, it exists. Well, that was dumb and annoying and stupid and obnoxious, but let's go ahead and test it out. So we'll add this small cargo addition in, and that should save. And so now we're going to stop and hit play, and we should have 3 metal slag, but the cargo is still doesn't appear to have actually worked. No, we don't have the cargo addition. So it didn't save that we had constructed it. So why? Let's go ahead and debug.log. Well, maybe I just changed the value incorrectly here. Con plus key. No, it's the same thing. You can see that there is no mention of whether or not that thing has been loaded. Did I just not recompile, or is there something wrong? It's not saying that it ever loaded or didn't load. This is not getting called. So there are... Oh, do I have to hit the build? Of course I have to hit build. Oh, no, wait, this is on. It should have worked. Is there something wrong with the build menu where it screws up if it starts off as initialized? Because that would be weird. No. It's never checked. Okay, so here in refresh, we say that if it contains the key, then we are unready on purpose. We're going to go ahead and first things first, this button here for clearing our progress, we're going to go ahead and set that up properly. And that's just going to clear out everything. So we're going to need to have a carrier function for that too. We may move this off of the carrier and onto maybe the universe or something later on. So we have an option. One is that we can go through and we can do player prefs delete all. The problem is that that's going to delete our settings as well. I don't really see any other options, but we have this additional issue that we've got a lot of stuff in our setup already. So harvestable, object.collected.clear, science target, .research.clear, universe .scrap metal equals 10, and we're also going to want to clear out our constructeds. There we go. That should allow us to clear this whenever we need to, and we're going to just have this button be the one that does it. Normally what you do is you'd pop up a, wait, are you sure? But we'll do that later. Alright, so that's cleared. Now we hit this build menu, and you can see that we can afford this object. But the issue is, why isn't this object getting saved when we tell it to? So we're going to go in here, and we're going to make sure that we understand that it has been saved. Debug.log, saving constructed value. Wait for it to reload. Clear that stuff. Build menu, small cargo edition. but it never, none of these actually checked. I can already tell that, because I've still got these constructibles, right? This is constructed string. This has this crap, but it never gets called. None of these ever get called. So what's going on? Is constructed not the thing that actually gets checked? I'll feel kind of stupid if that's the case. Okay, so is constructed never gets checked. That's fascinating. So what gets checked instead? Well, let's take a look. I think that the problem is it might be that it doesn't check. It checks directly instead of what it's supposed to be doing. So here it is. This, we're not going to want to do that. That's dumb. There we are. Now it'll probably work. All right, so now let's go ahead and try it on for size. So go into the build menu, and then we hit the small cargo edition. You can see that it's saved constructed small cargo. If we launch, we'll see that we have a larger set of cargo elements than we did before. Although it's hard to see because there's something in the sun. We just managed to spawn in underneath a bunch of debris, so we can't see ourselves very well. That's obnoxious. Oh yeah, it's the lighting error, because there's a lighting problem with the editor. But we have extra cargo, right? So we're going to go ahead and stop, hit play, and we'll see whether or not that cargo is still here. So with the build menu, there's no build menu, but I can't tell if that's because we don't have enough slag or what, so we'll go ahead and launch. And if we pause and go over to the ship, there it is. Hello, Mr. Ship. Do you have your spare cargo? It looks like we do. That looks a lot like spare cargo. If we take a closer look, here's the small cargo. And you can see that it is not one of the builders. So that one is not what we're looking to do here. Wait, is it? Yeah, it might be. If we go over into the construction area, buildable manager, and we look down into the small cargo, this is the object in question, and it's on. So good. It looks like the small cargo is in fact, yeah, there it is in fact working fine. So we have made saving and loading work. It requires some dancing because for some reason Unity doesn't allow you to get a list of keys in player prefs, which is really strange, but it works, and I'm tired. That was an unusually arduous stream for me. Nothing worked right, and it makes me feel like I'm a big whiner, but I couldn't get anything to work right. Even at the end, I'm not happy with this. This is total kludge. It's not even in the right class. It shouldn't be in carrier. It should be in universe. But I'll leave it for now. We'll fix it later if we need to, if it gets too confusing for me when I'm developing. Either way, thank you for watching. I'll pay attention to chat for a little while longer, just in case anybody has any questions. But, whew, I am definitely done. That was not a great hour and a half for me. But I'll be back on Sunday, so hopefully. If I'm not, then it's because I'm having fun, partying, or maybe I get hit by a car. Hopefully I'm partying or streaming. See you around.